All right, it is the 12th of November, 2024. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, a clothing company that is so much more than just a clothing company. We're called In the Image Clothing Company because we are all universally designed in the image of our living God, who is Jesus Christ. We discuss here the skeletal system of the human body. We talk about clothing because it's the only thing that has the potential to alter our bodies to the degree that it does. There's nothing else that we come in contact with the world, within the world, that has the potential to alter us the way that clothing does, being placed on us. So it needs to stay centered. It needs to sit on our bodies the way that our bodies work. Pants need to be entirely above the hips, slightly higher in the front than the rear. The shoulder seams on the tops need to sit behind that little bone that's actually your collarbone, allowing your shoulders to be in their neutral positions, and the edge seams of the shoulders need to be right at the very edges. So we discuss how we get altered through things within the world, and our bodies get into patternings. Unnatural patternings. We start to work out of these positions that just aren't actually the way that the body works, and it really only has its one function. Each thing within the body only does what it does. Each thing has a neutral position: the pelvis, the ankles, the wrists, the spine, the neck. The neck is the spine, right? The cervical spine, the jaw. The body really only does what it actually does, and most all people are operating out of a position that is not that position. So we show how to get back to that, and we show what's really happening within the body. Now, what I'm going to do within this video is I'm going to discuss fake internal rotation, okay? I've had two prerequisites since before I founded In the Image Clothing Company. They will always stay the same, just to allow the body to have a chance to operate natural. And those are to lace your shoes with In the Image Clothing Company's shoelacing technique. You can find that where you find us online. InTheImageClothingCompany.com is our official domain. As of today's date, it's not up and running, but when you're watching this, you can probably go there. Just, it will be, is what I mean, depending on when you're seeing this. That's where you can go. That includes just tying your shoes evenly over toward the inside. That's the only way you're going to allow your foot to be unaltered, the way that a baby's foot is, or a toddler's foot, the way that the human foot actually works, the only way. Now, paired with that is removing all the tags from within your clothing. The ones within the shoes really alter that natural gripped arch in the feet, and then anywhere else they're placed within clothing, they're just causing an unnatural gap. They're slippery if they're made out of synthetic man-made materials, and they're doing a lot to the body. And I've gone into that within videos for In the Image Clothing Company. But what I want to discuss is, I've said many times, if you boil down what we do for the body through clothing, or just any avenue we do it through at In the Image Clothing Company, to one thing: it's getting back our natural, even internal rotation. In a modern 2024 where people are stuck in a constant chronic state of external rotation. This is how people stand and walk: shoulders external, collapsed arches, taking their whole feet outward, external, legs external, pelvis has to be anterior if your legs are external, because if it's posterior, everything goes internal, which is where we would naturally be. So, I'm going to discuss fake internal rotation because clothing has to sit where the body is going to work. The body only works the way it does. That's it. We don't get to tell it, and it doesn't do its proper thing if it's being forced out of its natural position from something external. So, as I discuss, clothing needs to sit where the pants are entirely above the hips, slightly higher in the front than the rear. The seams on top of the shoulders need to be behind that little bone that's actually your collarbone, and then right at the very edges is where those edge seams should be. That's what I say, that's what I've discussed, that's how it is. Universally for all humans, that's how it always will be because of the skeletal system and its natural position. The only position that it actually has, that it actually works out of, everything being neutral, the wrists, the pelvis, the ankles, the spine, the jaw, having things neutral in their only working position is the only way the body actually works. And that's how I always say we shouldn't have to stretch, and we don't need to work out to be able to do what we need to do. Those are truths, and we get into it, and that's what we do at In The Image Clothing Company. So what I'm going to discuss though is how so many people, even if they have the functionality to be able to internally rotate parts of their body, because most people really just don't nowadays. External rotation is what they're stuck in, and they're kind of just going through life kind of limp in a sense without their natural internal rotation. And what'll happen is if people are trying to measure their legs internal rotation at the hip socket, and they're in a position of the pelvis where it's anterior already, which if your pelvis is anterior, your body is in external rotation. I know it sounds a little blanket statement-y, but it is not. Because if your core needs to contract to activate, your pelvis has to go posterior. That's the only way your muscles here can actually get shorter and contract, is if the pelvis goes posterior. And if it's anterior like this, like so many people's are, your whole body's in external rotation. It just is, because your core will be deactivated, and this little glute that I talk about a lot that's within this little side kind of like pocket of your hip is called the glute medius, and it works so much like together with the core. So when the core contracts, so does the glute medius. Now you're posterior of the pelvis, and now you have actual internal rotation because now everything is activated. If you're anterior with the pelvis, right, meaning it's going this way, then your leg, even if you have the ability to get your legs to rotate in, see how my leg is rotating inward and now back outward and now inward, but look where my pelvis is. Even if you can do that, and like let's say you can do it evenly on both sides, like somebody who wears cowboy boots, for example, they don't have the potential to be tying their shoelaces unevenly, but they have a heel taking their pelvis anterior. Now cowboys, cowgirls, right, men or women, who do wear boots like that, slip-on cowboy boots, it is common for them to be able to have some rotations pretty healthily, to a degree I'm going to get into, within the hips. But their core is going to be deactivated without a say, just because this position doesn't allow the core to contract. And if I'm here with my heels on the ground versus having my heels be elevated from a heel on my cowboy boot, now my pelvis goes here just to compensate, or else that heel would just push me and knock me over forward. So what happens is, even though you have the ability in a position where your pelvis is anterior to rotate your hips inward, right, internal rotation, even if it is even on both sides, you're not actually having a naturally functioning body, not even anywhere near. And it's not you, it's not your body, but it's the clothing. And it's just not natural, because again, when I say not natural, I mean the only way the body works is the way it's naturally designed to work. So the whole point of this isn't some kind of opinion of you need your body to be X and then I put like the word natural in there. It's otherwise you're going to get sore. Otherwise you're having parts of your body that aren't even activated, that aren't even doing anything. being that core and that glute medius. And we can't just tell our body to work out of a position where part of it is turned off. That's what I mean. It's not about an opinion of how your body should work, but as I always say, the body only works the way it does. That is it. And the way that is the entire body working as a whole. So, yeah, let's get into this, because fake internal rotation is really what that is. Because sure, your femur, this bone of your leg, is rotating inward and then outward and inward and outward, but it's not actually happening. Hear that correct. I'm not trying to make some weird thing. What I mean is the body does work as a whole. So this glute medius needs to be able to contract. Okay, now you're neutral. And I've shown this position all the time. It's just the position I stand in because being the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, being a company that's about the body's natural workings, I need to be, to the best that I can, the example. Physically, my body needs to be all that I can do, at least, naturally functioning. So that's why I can say the way that I stand is natural, right? That's what I mean. Now, you have to be neutral. That's the only way the body works. You're neutral, and from here, you can do stuff, right? The wrist, I talk about this. Neutral, you can go up, and neutral, you can go down. I didn't mean to compensate with my arm, but if you're not neutral, then you're on too far of one end, or you're on too far of the other end, and that's imbalanced, right? Pelvis, neutral, is here, okay? Really, it's actually quite posterior, because then everything's just activated. Hip flexors are activated, glute medius is activated, hamstrings are activated, glutes are activated, just meaning all the glutes working together, core is activated, calves, arches, and here you are standing in a neutral position. Now, if your pelvis is anterior, it's like the wrist being here, but always, right? And not only that, but if your pelvis is anterior, your wrists always will be down a little bit because the body is all connected, okay? So having this position, now when you internally rotate your leg, everything's working. This is contracting, core is still, as it should be, always activated. This is your core. I mentioned like an apple. The core of the apple is where the seeds are. That's what allows the apple to be what it is. The core of our bodies is the center of our being, of our actual physical self. That's the core. That's what controls our pelvis. And that's what helps with breathing. That's what keeps our spine safe, really. I mean, our core is so important to be constantly activated, and it naturally would be unless altered by anything that it could be altered by. But clothing, right, placed on it in ways that are just altering the pelvis's position. Now, in this natural position, if you internally rotate, everything's working as it was designed to work, the only way it works. So you have internal rotation, you have external rotation, neutral, okay? You have internal rotation and external rotation, neutral. Now, a lot of people will be in an anterior position of the pelvis and think that they do have internal rotation of the legs, of the hip socket, but really they don't. And the reason why it's a problem is because it's actually very dangerous. When you're not activated here and here, just meaning again the entire body as a whole, if you are here and you do any internal rotation, you can blow out your hip, because this muscle, look at this, that's a great thing to be able to see. I shouldn't know exactly how this video is gonna pan out with the visuals, but okay, pelvis, anterior. Now you internally rotate the femur. Now this hip could just blow out, because this glute medius, that's its exact location, and that's its function. Contract here to stabilize the hip, right? If this glute medius doesn't contract, really what's happening is the pelvis is going anterior, and now you can just like pop your hip out of socket, because laterally, that's what the glute medius does. It's that lateral stabilization, right? I mean, like, I'm trying to make it kind of abrupt so you can see that glute medius will contract to really give you stabilization within your hips. Now, but again, you have to be, just because the location of the muscle and the insertions on both ends, you have to be neutral for it to contract. Meaning you have to feel a constant activation within your core, which again is not something to work up to. It would naturally be that way. We just have to stop restricting the body and it'll happen. That's really how it is. So picture, I'm gonna move to the shoulders. Fake internal rotation at the shoulders. Picture getting out of a pool, right? You reach up to the ledge of the pool, you get up, and look where my shoulders are here. Pushing out of the pool, they are so internal. I mean, that's just complete internal rotation. Pressing out of the pool, okay? But look at where my shoulders are as far as the location, because if I was having my shoulders in the position so many people are chronically in because of patterning down here in external rotation, now I try to get out of a pool, you can't get there. And so you can try to push yourself up, but this is fake internal rotation of the shoulder unit as a whole, right? Because same thing with this glute medius. Well, look at my pelvis position here. Because of what I'm doing with my shoulders, that's what I say, the body works as a whole. I'm focusing on putting my shoulders in a position that's so unnatural, the pelvis follows. It has to. Everything's connected within the body. So, because I say all the time, you can't split the body in half and have good internal rotation up here and like external rotation down there, because the spine connects everything to the point where whatever the upper body's doing, the lower body's going to do as well. And so any imbalance in the upper body affects the lower body and vice versa. The body just has to work as a whole. You have no say in it doing anything else. Neither do I. Just nobody could change it. It just does what it does. So yeah, this fake internal rotation of the shoulders, the reason why we're calling it fake internal rotation, just because you can kind of turn your arms in, the muscles aren't actually activating because the rotator cuff doesn't even work down here. Again, just like the glute medius, it has to contract. The rotator cuff muscles have to contract. And if they're being so like stretched out to get your arms, well, not to get them there, but because your arms are so far down, the muscles are actually just stretched out farther than they'd naturally be, and so they can't contract to get that internal rotation because they're just like pulled on, right? Extended. So you can try to like turn your arms in, but it's fake internal rotation in the sense of just whatever muscles can contribute to try to rotate the upper arm bone inward will do that, but there's no strength there because the muscles that actually, the only ones that actually do the motion aren't in their position, which is here, to be able to work. And again, you see where my pelvis went? When my arms went to their natural position, from what I was showing the fake internal rotation of being this unnatural position, you pull your shoulders just to their natural position, your pelvis will just automatically follow because your spine connects your shoulders to your pelvis. The body just works as a whole. So with that being said, a lot of times you'll see people and they have the ability to internally rotate their feet. They might even like usually stand with their toes in a little bit, which is natural, but they might be doing it kind of like this. Pelvis so anterior. And so they're not actually in internal rotation. And that's just, it's not like I'm trying to make like a point or a claim, but I'm just pointing out what's really going on. Because just meaning like, it's not like I'm being so particular about like doing good at being in internal rotation, but I just mean it's just really not actually happening. I just mean it to be so like transparently real, like, because there's going to be just stress put on things because certain muscles are actually turned off, being the core and the glute medius, regardless of what else is also. Those are the two I'm focusing on right now because those are the two major ones that will really actually get you into your only working position that the human body actually has. I mean, that's just real. So the point is, with having those muscles turned off, everything else will be trying to just work like excessively and doing things that it's not actually designed to try to like support your body, because part of the body isn't even working. It's like the shoulder, right? When you're here trying to push yourself up, shoulders so far down in actual external rotation, but trying to turn inward while they're in external rotation, because that's really the same down here. Your legs are actually in external rotation trying to turn inward. There's no activation of the internal rotators of the leg to twist your foot inward when your pelvis is anterior. You're kind of just like turning your leg in, but there's no activation at all. Here in the inner adductors, the leg's kind of just swiveling around. You can stand like this completely in, but you're actually, the only muscles that are actually working are external rotators, while your femurs are turned in. And I've discussed this because I have a video that I titled "There is a Lot to Internal Rotation," and I showed that how you can actually have joints in a position that's internal while having the only muscles that are actually activated be external rotators. That's what's going on in this, what I'm calling fake internal rotation, whether it's of the hips or the shoulders, either spot. Because here, my toes are about like this. I mean, my hands are directly above my feet. My toes are pointed in this much. But there's no internal rotators as far as muscles that actually cause internal rotation to happen. There's none of those activated within my hips. And so I'm so unstable, and you can see it. Regardless of how silly it looks, I actually hope it looks kind of silly, because then you can see just how like no stabilization I have at all. And the tension is on my low back. And the tension is like in the tendons, right? These tendons that connect your hamstrings to the joint of the knee, or those inner adductors, the tendons that connect those to the joint of the knee, that's where everything's going to get felt. And that's scary, like actually a little bit scary, in the sense of, like I was showing earlier with like blowing out your hip, it's because you're just so deactivated. Sure, your legs are turned inward, but they're not activating into internal rotation. They're just kind of like being thrown in by external rotators. So that's really what's going on. Because I can stand with my feet that far in and be extremely stable, as long as my pelvis is tucked to allow all the muscles to work. Because then you don't feel it in the tendons here and here, but you feel it in the muscles, because the only reason you were feeling it in the tendons is because the muscles were turned off. And so it's just, they're just kind of so loose and relaxed that the only thing that's allowing your legs to even stay up is those tendons. And you're just feeling tension being pulled because the muscles are deactivated. That's really why you feel that, okay? So, yeah, hamstrings, inner adductors, because the point is, then you'll feel it, like you'll intellectually feel it transfer from here up, and all that's happening is your muscles are actually working rather than your tendons, like I'm saying, just being potentially pulled, as in like a tear. So yeah, anyway, and that's why we can call it fake internal rotation, because that's all it is. And you'll kind of notice this within people. I've talked before where when we walk, like when I showed barefooted in the grass, it was in the summer, the natural walking gait, and I showed how the feet work and everything. I showed the hips shouldn't move. When we walk, I'll show it here. Like, your hips shouldn't be adjusting. There should be no, like, I can take my feet completely off the ground and your hips shouldn't adjust. And it's not something to do workouts to work up to. But again, the body, if it's working as a whole, that's just how it works. There should be no compensation, because if there is, now things are just working in positions they're not even designed to. So it's not about getting some kind of strength, but it's just about the natural functionality of the body as a machine. That's all the body is. It's a mechanical machine. That's why so many of my videos are titled How Blank Affects Body Mechanics. Because the body is just a piece of, I don't want to say it in some kind of like weird way, but the body is just in a sense, a piece of machinery. It's just something that hinges and pivots and moves. That's all the human body is. It's a vessel for us as spirit children of our living God to just go through this world in. And so it really does only have its one working way, in whatever that is, in the wrist, in the elbow, in the shoulder, in the spine, in the jaw, in the pelvis, in the knees, in the ankles, in the feet. They only have their one position, each of them together, meaning their one neutral working position, like I was showing, and from there they can go this way, or from there they can go this way. From here, you can go even more posterior, just a little bit, because you should be pretty much there anyway without forcing it. And then from here you can go this way, right? I mean, the body just has its movements out of its neutral position. So that neutral position is that activated as a whole position, right? Just like this. Like, everything within my body is activated. And as I've said so many times, that's how we use the least amount of energy within the body, because that's the way it would naturally work, is as a whole. So that's fake internal rotation, and that's cool. I'm really, really grateful for this video, for how it turned out, and for the visuals that I was allowed to kind of like figure out how to show that. Yeah, I'm really grateful. It's a good video. Yeah, it's really great to be able to be, like I was discussing at the beginning, to the best of what I can, the example physically, because I don't want to make this seem like I'm somebody who has like book knowledge about the anatomy and I'm like trying to show it on a whiteboard times and places, and if people do that, okay, but that's not what I want to do, because I want it to be understood, and I want to be able to show it and explain it to where you can see what I'm talking about when I say we discuss undisputed universal truths at In The Image Clothing Company. So yes, all right. Anyway, we will have clothing available for In The Image Clothing Company when that comes. Always made out of 100% natural materials. No tags protruding from the inside, just to allow the body to work. Staying centered, staying balanced, sitting where I discussed clothing has to sit. And that'll come. Simple stuff, plain things like this. We're not like gonna have things on the outsides of it, you know, branding, logoing. It's going to be very nice and simple. We have In The Image Clothing Company podcast, where we have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ. You can find that where you find your podcasts in audio form, as well as, at least until the last one we filmed up until today's date, they're also placed in visual where you see these videos for In The Image Clothing Company. So check that out. Like I said, my name is Evan Strong, the founder of In The Image Clothing Company, and today's date is the 12th of November 2024. Check out In The Image Clothing Company for a lot of anatomy of the human body, as this video is as well, because that's what we are, is we focus on getting our bodies back to the way that our God designed them. We just do that through clothing mostly. We do discuss a lot of other things as well within the world, but we don't focus on worldly things. So yeah, all right. Thank you. There's fake internal rotation. And so even if people do have the ability to put their body's extremities, as far as the legs or the arms, into a position that is internal, it's probably not quite actual, real, activated, just the only way the body actually does internal rotation. And so we show how to just allow the body to work natural here, without having to do anything, but it's about removing the things that are restricting it from just happening. Okay, all right, thank you.